I have a brand new third channel called Realm of Geekdom that I want y'all to check out, where I will be uploading classic vintage episodes of the Geekdom 101 podcast, long form content to cure your boredom. Plus, later this year, brand new episodes of the show will be appearing here on the Realm of Geekdom YouTube channel. More content, longer form to help you cure you of your boredom. Thanks a lot. Check out a link down below in the description for Realm of Geek. Star Wars Celebration 2023 gave us the announcement of a new Star Wars film taking place 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker. Now, when we go back to The Rise of Skywalker, there was the spoilers had come out for it. We talked about it. Then when we actually saw the movie, the ending of the film features KYLO Ren putting his hand on Rey's belly before, like, they make out, which was, a lot of folks didn't like that. He puts his hand on her stomach and then he dies. And I thought to myself, after actually seeing the film, did he just, like, use, like, a force impregnate thing? And I wasn't really serious about it. Then I get online and I see Josh from Den of Nerds saying the same thing. And I'm like, okay, wait. So I'm not the only one that thought this. And then now it's becoming a thing. So I want to discuss this theory that you and I mean, I'm not saying we came up with it, but we definitely had the same idea. I'm sure others did too. This idea of possibly bringing KYLO Ren back. Now, I want to say this before we go any further. This announcement of this Rey movie is a very risky move by Lucasfilm because Rey the character, and this is not Daisy Ridley's fault, unfortunately. This could follow her whole career. She is the representation of the sequel trilogy, and to a lot of people, that's bad. Even if they have a knockout script, even if the movie's like phenomenal, people are still gonna have that weird sort of negativity towards it. So I'm not saying that me and Josh are hyped for it yet. I think we need to see a little bit more before we get excited. But this idea of them bringing back KYLO Ren, okay, KYLO Ren, even for people who like the sequel trilogy and those who hate it, it's almost unanimous that he's like the best new character. Of all the new characters, right, he's the best one. So let's talk about it, brother. So tell me about your what did you initially think at the end of Rise of Skywalker when you saw him like put his hand on, we've never seen a quote force impregnation, but we have seen the Immaculate Conception, which is Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
And that means there's already a precedent for this, even from Lucas.
Yeah. So there's like a number of things, right? And I feel like it's funny because, you know, you and I both talked about this before we started recording, where we're like, you know what, we got to kind of preface this by saying this might end up being whack as hell. And to be honest with you, this movie, like, who knows? And I think that's where a lot of us are at, is like, who knows? And, you know, there are a lot of people that were even trying to be very positive about Rise of Skywalker. I remember when I initially saw the movie, I liked it. I even liked it for a while. You know, it's obviously not like perfect or whatever, but I liked it for a while. And then like it slowly became more clear like what this movie was and how really bad it is. And I think a lot of Star Wars fans had that experience where, you know, it does some things right. There's some retconning of The Last Jedi. There's some Luke stuff. There's some stuff, right? They dangle it. They dangle the keys. But then like it sets in after a while where you're, especially if you watch other movies and then watch Rise, where you're like, wow, like this was a very hastily, poorly put together movie, which is so funny because I don't know if you having this feeling, but like the Mando season 3 feels like this. It feels like Rise, where it's like, instead of like watching a story unfold, we're just doing things. And we're just like going from this thing to that thing to this thing to that thing, right? But
I can't say I feel, I was going to say, I can't say I feel that strongly about Rise. I think the issue, I'm sorry, about Mando season 3. I think what you're talking about is, it took me a while to figure this out. I had to do a lot of videos, have a lot of talks with different fans about this. The problem with Rise of Skywalker is that it's a representation. Just like how Rey is a representation of the sequel trilogy, the Rise of Skywalker is like an amalgam, a philosophical example of the entire Disney Star Wars botchery, because
Yeah.
Everything's rushed. There was no plan. They're bringing back characters for nostalgia. It did everything wrong, but it tried so hard to do everything right. It's
Yeah.
almost like, I hate to make this comparison, bro, but some of you guys will understand, and I'm sure you will. It's like when there's this girl you like and you try so hard to get her and she's turned off by you because you're trying
Mhm.
so hard. That's kind of how
Yeah.
Rise felt.
Mhm.
And I do see a little bit of that in Mando season 3, but I'm still enjoying it compared to Rise.
Oh, definitely.
Dude, there were scenes in Rise that I thought were great because of the actors and the scene where Rey fights Kylo and the camera spinning around and you see it changing locations. That's great filmmaking, like just that
Yeah.
objectively. But
It's a
yeah,
cool idea.
the story is bad. And so I don't know, man, like when I heard the Rey announcement, it's like, first of all, I think Grogu's gonna be in this movie. I think
Mm.
Grogu will be in this movie. I'm calling it right now. Grogu will be in this thing. They're gonna milk Grogu to the end. But to your point, I see it did feel, yeah, Rise didn't feel good. And now with this new movie, part of me thinks, like what you had said before I started recording, that I don't know if Kathy Kennedy and Star Wars have learned their lesson yet about what works and doesn't work. I don't think she
Oh
really
no, they certainly
understands.
haven't.
You know,
No,
yeah.
they definitely haven't. But I think when it comes to the like Ray and maybe her, like you said, Kylo putting the hand on her and the feeling of maybe like a birth, a forced pregnancy happening. I think at the time when you're just experiencing the sequel trilogy, like building up Ray and Kylo like was the whole thing. It's really odd because it almost feels like every film does that dynamic
It's a
differently.
poem. They rhyme. Is that what you're? It's like a.
Well, no, no, no. All I'm saying is like it certainly seemed maybe not as much obviously in The Force Awakens, but after The Last Jedi that like that romance and that connection and those two being drawn to each other like is the whole thing. And I think most people I think can admit that that's actually the most interesting part of The Last Jedi, the scenes between those two characters and whatever that tension is between them. And I honestly still say to this day, if she would have just taken his hand at the end of the Last Jedi, the entire franchise would have gone a different way. I felt like that would have been really compelling, and I feel like Episode 9 would have had to be much more interesting to deal with that idea and that
It would have been
concept.
a hell of
But
a twist.
it would have been a hell of a twist. But regardless, just the idea of a couple being at the center of this thing, which by the way is always true in Star Wars. You have Padme and Amidala, you have Leia and Han,
I
right?
was
Like that's
thinking the
you've
same
always
thing.
had that. So I felt like, okay, well, they're setting this up for the next generation. That's always what happens. Luke and Leia are the progeny of Padme and Anakin, right? You
And
have
Kylo's the son
in
of Han and Leia, and it all goes
exactly,
back to the
exactly.
Skywalker blood, that mighty Skywalker
Right.
blood. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, like, as a fan, I don't think it's crazy to think, well, that's the way this is going to go. And the way that it happens in Rise with, whatever happened at the end between them when he brings her back and then gives up his life force or whatever, there's that obvious moment where he has the hand on the stomach, could be the womb. And Star Wars fans make theories. And so, like, I think it was a pretty obvious just extension of, well, this is the thought of that. Now, what's wild, though, is back then, I think I was chastised for thinking that.
Me
A lot of
too.
people,
And I
yeah, like
wasn't
people
even super
hated it.
serious about it. I was just saying, what
Yeah.
if, you know?
Well, people hated it, and I think there were people like there were Raylos, then there were like left leaning people that hated it because they felt like it took away the autonomy of Ray, and she didn't choose that, et cetera, et cetera. There were people, just more traditional Star Wars fans that just thought it was the stupidest thing ever, and like, oh my god, that's ridiculous. But you have Anakin being born of the Force, right? And that's like everybody's favorite character. So to me, like, I don't think it's that crazy. I don't think it's that ridiculous. I also think if Kathy and Lucasfilm thinks that they're just gonna like continue Star Wars and like have this whole new area that's ripe for new characters, new conflicts, ships, merchandising, movies, etc., then why wouldn't you have children? Like that's obvious. Like, extending that past. And Star Wars has always been about family. So I think that it actually makes a lot of sense. The 15 years gap is pretty interesting because if our theory is correct, she would have one child, maybe multiple children that are around 15 years old that could be young enough to be considered children, but old enough to like do stuff in the
Yeah.
movie and be set up
Teens.
as characters, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I
that's kind
mean,
of where I'm at with it.
well, no, and the thing is, yeah, the 15, I agree with you. The 15-year thing made me say, because when I saw Rise of Skywalker, there's two things in that movie. Here's the thing about me. All right. I watch a lot of movies. I have a lot. I'm very big on films, and I'm very big on franchises and how things can work. And so I've thought about why choices are made in films. Now, obviously, Rise of Skywalker was filled with choices that they thought were right, and maybe they weren't.
Mm.
They thought they were right, but there's two things about the movie. Not just when he puts his hand on her stomach and then just vanishes, which was weird, but also when she lights her yellow lightsaber. Now, the reason as to why that was interesting is because people have taken that scene where she lights it and they've broke it down and say, why would she even light a lightsaber in the middle of, like, it doesn't make any sense. If you're bearing, Luke and Leia's sabers and then you light your own, why would anybody do that? Like, logically, if
Because
this were
they
real,
just made it. They want to see if it works.
well, right, but that what I was thinking is more so like why'd they put it in there? Because she's obviously going to use that in a movie. Like I knew,
Mm-hmm.
brother, I swear to God, I knew that they were gonna come back someday. Maybe it wouldn't be for actually 15 years, like maybe not till 2030, whatever. They were gonna come back and bring Daisy Ridley back to play Rey again. I knew it, bro. I just I didn't think it would. Like when Rise of Skywalker flopped, I thought maybe they changed their minds, right? But when they were making it, it's clear that choice was made to say, okay, we might bring this character back. And it's just funny because you look at these choices and now it makes sense in the retrospect.
Yeah, a couple of things there. I mean, first of all, I don't think Rise of Skywalker flopped.
Well, you know what I mean, creatively flopped.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's fair, and I think that it got absolutely destroyed, and I think it made less than The Last Jedi, so it continues a downward trend for the franchise, but I think it still made like 1.1, 1.2 billion, right?
Yes.
Yep. It's really interesting because a lot of people always ask or say stuff to me about the prequels and how like 20 years after the prequels, like everybody loves them and like that effect they think will happen to the sequel trilogy.
I don't.
And I wonder, man. I know, right? And I wonder about that too. But the one thing I'll say is like, dude, they didn't go back. I mean, I guess with Clone Wars they technically did, but they didn't go back to like Anakin and Jar Jar 6 years after the fucking prequels. Do you know what I mean? Like they didn't do that. So it's so weird that like you have this conception in the fandom that, oh, well, the sequels have their fans, and as those fans age up, they will just love that shit. And maybe Disney believes that as well, because that's what they're banking on is like, oh, Rey just is that popular. And so doing another movie with Rey is going to bring that many people out to see it. I'm super curious because, like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, everybody's going to see this movie regardless because they want to either see the dumpster fire or they want to see it for it being awesome. But then I'm like, man, but people are legitimately checking out of Star Wars a little bit. Like, the numbers on these shows are down. And it just seems like, man, there could actually be a scenario here, depending on what else comes out about the film, that a lot of people just reject it wholesale. And they're like, I'm not about it. And that's so weird because I don't know why they would choose this movie at this time to be like their new thing. They've been out of the movies since Rise, and they have 3 movies announced, and the other 2 sound cooler. They sound better.
They do.
It's like so weird to me that they're like, but guess what? You're gonna have to eat your Rey movie before you get to your dessert or whatever. You know, it's a very
Did they?
wild.
They didn't announce to what order they're coming out in, right? Did they actually say what order?
So they haven't officially said anything, but the news on the Obed Chene movie is like we have a lot of info on that. The trades have been talking about it. Jeff Sider's been talking about it. I've been talking about it. We know a lot about that movie. And just today, I think one of the Hollywood trades talked about how the plan is, again, not official, but leaked from Disney, and this time through the trades, that they want to do the Rey movie in 2025, and they want to do the Filoni movie in 2026. What that means is that Dave's probably done doing shows. Like he's gonna do Ahsoka, and then he's gonna start working on that movie.
Yeah, he'll probably write some of the episodes for Mandalorian season 4, but he won't actually be in the trenches.
Will there be a Mandalorian season 4? I'm not so sure, and I'm not even sure.
Now I'm not sure because of the movie announcement.
Yeah, I just don't know, man. I don't know, and I don't even like. You know, we're talking on the day that the 7th episode came out, and I don't want to give like spoilers for people, but like. There's a scenario where this next episode you don't need a 4th season,
right? And not just
do you know
that.
what I mean?
No,
like,
I do know. Well, here's the thing. Also, like you said, Clone Wars helped the prequel trilogy. I think Disney is banking on Mando, Ahsoka, maybe even the Rebels of the New Republic, if that even comes out. If that even comes out, is going to help the sequels. I don't think it's going to work because I think the difference with the prequels and the sequels, to your point about like the fan saying 20 years people could feel differently, is that the prequels didn't change that much context from the sequels. I'm sorry, from the original trilogy. They obviously added Anakin stuff, but it wasn't like they made that many changes to the original core story. I can still separate the two. The problem is when you've got the chosen one to destroy the Sith no longer being that important. And then the other thing, which is going to go to the point about our theory, the one thing that Disney has been really trying to hammer home for the past 3 years, I've noticed this, man. You have two theory cut a rant video about this, is that they are retconning the entire saga to where now the Force dyad, this dyad is like the new, that's the real goodness, right? Like now Palpatine is saying he wanted to get with Skywalker because he realized that the Palpatine blood and the Skywalker blood together can form the dyad. He was right, but it wasn't him. It was his grandchildren. Would it not fit the story they're currently telling, the story they're currently teasing, if the real most powerful Jedi ever, the real Force, the actual chosen one now, because I don't like the retcon, but they're doing it, is the son of Rey and Kylo Ren. If you take the dyad and you create offspring from it, right, it's no different than, you know, combining mighty bloodlines. Like, would that not make sense that the story they're going to try to tell here? Because I have a feeling that the Rey movie, and I could be wrong, I think the Rey movie could actually be episode 10, and they're just putting out
Dude, so many people think that is, and I get
I'm not
it because,
sure.
well, look, I've seen a lot of people with that take, and I even saw some like really predominant Star Wars YouTubers be like, it's obviously going to be episode 10. And I'm like, dude, guys, everything I have heard is like, no. Like, that's not what they're doing. It might set up episode 10, but if it's episode 10,
that's true.
Then why are there two other movies that are not episodic that are completely separate in the timeline?
Well, here's what I think.
Like,
I think they're going to put it out, and I think if it does well, sort of like 1977 Star Wars, if it does well, they'll come back and do episodes 11 and 12, and if it doesn't, they'll just move on. That could be their strategy. Instead of announcing a trilogy, they just say, we're going to put this movie out, see how it does, and then later change it.
Sure. I just think that the hype of saying episode 10 is like, that's something you would announce. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's something you would like talk about, and that's not really it. Like, that's not, and especially like given all the stuff that I've heard behind the scenes, like that's just not it. Like, from what I've heard, Rey isn't even the main character. This movie's not really about Rey. Like, it's about other people.
That's what I'm. Does that not agree with our little theory, bro? Like, does that?
No, but it's not even about her. It's not about any of that. It's about brand new characters, sort of exploring the time period in which she is rebuilding the Jedi. But to be honest with you, here's the real fucking truth, man. They don't know what this movie's about, brother. They have a script throughout in six. They have no fucking idea. They have a writer's room that they did last year. They had Damon Lindelof and his partner, and then this massive thing that they just literally threw out, bro. They threw it out a couple of weeks before Celebration. Now they're talking about it, and they have Steve Knight, and he's gonna do a script and get it done in the next 6 weeks. They don't even know what the movie's about, bro. But you know what they know is that they have to make a movie in 2025 or KK's out. They know that they're on thin ice and that Bob Iger's super pissed. And so Kathy's like just doing one last shot. She's like, before I get out of here, I'm going to leave one last stinky fart in the office. I'm leaving them with a Rey movie and I'm out. And it's like, oh, like, holy shit.
No, I'm with you. I just have this weird feeling that even if it doesn't come to fruition, in the back of their minds, like this whole Force dyad thing, like they've been building to this character that whether or not this character's light side or dark side, Palpatine's always wanted to combine the blood. And when there was even theories, you remember that theory about how they took the blood from Luke's or the DNA from Luke's hand and combined it with Palpatine's to give him a new body. None of that's kind of, you know, Project Necromancer could be that. I don't really know. But the point is that it just feels like the direction they're going in, whether it's this movie or, like you said, a trilogy later, will be the children of Kylo Ren and Rey. It just because, like you said, it's an ongoing family story. The Skywalker bloodline will continue, this time mixed in with the Palpatine bloodline. And you've got a Jedi that's potentially the scariest person in the history of Star Wars, having the power of both bloodlines, that we could actually see a movie someday, and it could be 20 years down the road, where we have their child, like, smashing planets and things like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
who
dude. Look,
knows, bro?
there's a
Who
part of me that's just
knows?
the there's a part of me that's just the big sweaty Star Wars nerd that like
Right.
doesn't think about all the Disney stuff, doesn't think about all that context, and like just from the sweaty like nerd perspective, dude, it would be awesome. And she could have twins, one could go dark side, and the conflict could really be about them,
And
you
it
know?
goes back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think there's so much that they could do with that, and I think it could actually be really, really fun within the lore for the thing. You know what I mean? Like I think it actually plays, and it could be really, really cool. I'll tell you this: I've heard a lot about bringing Ben Solo back in some way, shape, or form, and I think
We talked
Disney.
about it. I remember that.
Yeah, so like Disney has had a lot of different ideas thrown at them as to how to do this. They've like gotten spec scripts on like what that could look like. And what's crazy is what I heard was it was attached to a new trilogy. That's like the ideas they were getting writers to spec script how would you do a trilogy and how would you bring Kylo back, right? Just so that they have the ideas. So maybe there is something to that and they're doing something that then could be its own trilogy down the line with the children or something. But I think that it would be good. The problem is there's so much baggage that comes
That's the
with
problem.
doing that and with doing that through Ray. I honestly think there's a scenario here in which you could have gone 100 years ahead and Ray's gone.
Yeah, everyone's
and you're
gone.
still yeah, and you're still maybe exploring like what happened with Ray, and maybe her children are now old people that, I don't know. Like there's a way to still do it and tie it together, but it just really feels like that's not what they're doing.
Right.
Like they're just bringing Ray back because it's a crazy like holy shit kind of a thing, and they don't even have a script, bro. Like it's like
No, hey.
I don't know how to feel about it. Like
Well, I remember you and I had a conversation like in 2020, I think it was. It was probably on Nerd Theory. I don't really remember, but I remember we talked about. I didn't tell you this, but I remember we talked about like you talked about bringing Ben Solo back, how that was a thing they wanted to do because he's the best character of the new trilogy.
yeah.
And I remember having this idea. I think I was driving home from like a movie or something. Because what I'll do sometimes is I'll think about, okay, how could you actually fix this? And fixing Star Wars is not easy, especially not with the way it is now. And I don't know if
Yep.
this Rey movie is gonna fix it. This could actually cause more damage. But
Yeah.
I was thinking if they set a movie up where Rey discovers that there is a place somewhere in the galaxy, like again, sort of like this lost old Republic Jedi, sort of like what they did with Exegol, where it's like a not like Octu, but even more like a very powerful Force Virgins place that could actually bring people back from the dead. They could tell a story where Rey is trying to bring back her quote late husband Kylo Ren, Ben Solo back to, or late, whatever they were, well, right? And then meanwhile, you have a group of villains, maybe villains that are like worshiping like leftover Sith that worship Palpatine from the unknown region, and they're trying
Yeah.
to bring Palpatine back, and so it becomes this big sort of race to get to that location, and that's how you can bring back Ben Solo. There are ways they could do it, man. There's so many ideas, and I don't think the concept of like after seeing what they did in Clone Wars with like the witches and all
Yeah.
this really powerful like force planets and the Sith home world, there's the idea of them having this sort of fountain of youth type of story. I mean, it fits with Indiana Jones. Why can't you do it in
Yeah.
Star Wars? And they bring that's one way to do it. I'm not saying that's a great idea. I'm just saying it's stuff you think about like how they can fix this. Because look, there is a way. You can't fix Rise of Skywalker, but there's a way you can make the sequel trilogy, I guess, I don't want to say better, but I guess more
No,
valuable.
no, I think you're right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
look,
But I don't know if
think
they
you're
I don't know if
absolutely
they're
right.
going to do it.
Well, I would just question as to whether or not they even realize that's something they need to do.
Right. They might
Right?
just think that
Because
they're good to go.
yeah, well, I think that Dave and John probably get it. But Kathy is literally so like she's just so out of touch that I think she might literally just think that everybody that doesn't get it or like it is like sex is horrible or whatever. So she doesn't even realize that like and maybe I'm wrong because I have also heard some reports that like they realized they botched it up.
I heard that
But
same thing you did, that they
but
realized they messed up.
right, but within those reports, the indication was that they think Rise was a mistake because they did too much fan service. They think because they like undid all the stuff.
That
from
was
Last
only
Jedi,
one
they think
problem.
exactly.
Right.
That's like the other shoe dropping after you sort of torched it all down in TLJ. So there's like all kinds of problems with that, but I just don't think she gets it. Like, does she even think Rey needs redeemed? Bro, did they even realize that they could develop that character? You know what I mean? Like, I
I
don't think there's anything like that going on
I
over
mean,
there.
dude, I thought that that's what this movie's supposed to do. But let's keep it real though.
Yo,
Let's
to
keep
be real, yo, here's the thing. I think this is why this movie is going to fail for everybody, not just people like you and me, but for everybody. Because I think you and I have an expectation of the movie doing that. I think even people that liked the sequels up until Rise,
yeah,
because
the
a lot of
Last Jedi
Raylos,
fans.
yeah, they hate a lot of Raylos and Last Jedi fans. They hated Rise, bro.
Right. I have
Dude,
friends like that.
those people, they all have an expectation of Kathy fixing Ray in some way as well. So those people are going to be hurt as well if they deliver a hollow, like it's all good Ray movie. So
Yeah.
I think that's why I think this movie is going to fail for everybody. Unless, of course, like I'm open to it not, but like from my perspective, I think that expectation that you just said, like you have, I think I have it. I think Raylos have it. I think TLJ fans have it. I think everybody has that expectation. I think Kathy might not realize that that's even a thing that needs to happen.
And even if somebody steps up and tells her, she might, because ego and power, bro, like,
She'll fucking dismiss him.
right.
Yeah,
Here,
yeah,
because the
yeah.
truth is, and let's keep it real with about this. This movie might not even happen because let's not
Yeah.
forget there have been so many Star Wars projects that have been announced and canceled in the past like 4 or 5 years. There have been
Yeah.
filmmakers removed. Like people are all excited about the Filoni movie, and I think that one is going to happen. But there's
Yeah.
still a chance that James Mangold's movie might not happen because they might.
There's a
go
chance
to
that
diff-
all of them don't happen, bro.
Right,
Bro,
right,
let me
right.
ask you a question. What happens in 6 weeks when Steven Knight turns in a script that Kathy doesn't like?
Go back and write it again. You know what I mean? Like,
Dude,
back
like
to
that's
the
what I'm saying.
drawing
Like
board.
that's just
or
that's
she
just
fires him and gets
bro.
somebody else.
Okay, so then we're 6 months out. We're supposed like you know what I mean. What does he take another 6 weeks? Do you get another writer?
dude,
You know what I mean? Like this is
they would
Kathy.
have
Like
to
this is,
postpone the movie, right? What you would assume.
but they're not going to.
No,
Like
I don't know.
they're doing the same thing that they did in 2015.
That's what it sounds like to me.
They're doing the exact same thing, the exact same philosophy, and it's the same situation. Disney says, Papa Disney needs their Star Wars movie, Kathy. Kathy then says, okay, let's, I guess, change course and try to get something moving. They established the writer room last year, my guy. This wasn't a thing they had planned for years and years and years. Last year, they established a writer's room around Damon Lindelof. They lose that guy a month ago. Hire Steve Knight. Announce it at Celebration. He doesn't even have a script. What, dude? Like, what happens in 6 weeks? I think you're absolutely right. The odds of this movie happening, coin flip.
Well, not just that, but I think the fundamental problem, which we could have done a separate video about this, we'll just talk about it now. I think the fundamental problem with Disney Star Wars from day one, what they have not learned, and this is actually, I'm going to say something controversial. This is not all Kathy Kennedy's fault. This is a combination of her and the corporation, because
I agree with that, yeah.
here's the issue, and I want people to really open up their thinking caps here. Please don't get caught up in this, hate mongering for Star Wars, even though I understand why. Listen to what I'm saying. The issue is that they have it backwards. Papa Disney wants a Star Wars movie. You have to have the story first, and
Yeah, I
then
agree.
you announce the movie. When they were doing Force Awakens, you and me and everybody else thought, okay, they got the whole trilogy written out. They have at least the main plot points.
Michael Arndt wanted to. He's like, you need years to plan this all out. They
Right.
fire him, bring in Kasdan. Him and JJ are rewriting the script on the set. Remember all
Yeah.
those photos of the
Yeah,
red?
they're
shit with
holding
the
it.
script?
Yeah.
They're doing it on the set. No, I agree with you. It's a product to them.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
not a
is
story.
It should be you come up with the story first,
Yeah.
then you do the Star Wars Celebration announcements. This is becoming a situation now where it's literally we have to announce it. It's like they're
Yeah.
pressured by the shareholders or Bob Iger, and I would not even want to be in Kathleen Kennedy's shoes because yes, she has her issues, but imagine the kind of pressure because she's almost middle management. You're getting
Yeah.
pressure from above and from below, and your head's getting squeezed. So she's got to deliver a product, and that's not the right way to do it. Have the story first, then you make your announcements, and they've never done that. And that's been the
I
problem.
know.
That's really the problem from day one.
is.
It's not
Exactly.
even the woke shit. All that stuff's just extra
Yeah,
icing
I
on the
agree with
cake.
you.
The cake is
I agree
poorly
with you.
baked.
Dude, no, I 100% agree with you, and I think that that's what's so tragic about the situation is like, how did they arrive at the exact same spot that they were at before? It's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, it's you'd have to be taking crazy pills for this to just happen. And the other thing that's crazy is like Bob Iger literally leaves. It comes back to the company,
Comes
and it's still
back.
the same shit, and it's still the same shit on Lucasfilm's part. And the thing that I can't understand is why Kathy still has a job, like genuinely. And I know, like everybody, you're right. Like getting into that hate situation is crazy, and like just. But
I'm
here's the
with you.
reality:
I'm
is
with you. No, I'm
like
with you.
she is the president of the company.
Yes,
Like
she has to be a leader. She has to be. She's not a good leader. She's not a
she's the
good
person
leader.
that's doing this. She asked for a 3-year break, right? Bob Iger gives her the 3-year break. She loses director after director, project after project, and it gets to a point where Lucasfilm was like, "Well, if you don't have another movie out, you're fired." And then they just get back into that whole thing of like scrambling and pulling it all together behind the scenes and trying to present it like it's normal.
It's like Rise of Skywalker all over again.
It's horrible. It's really really bad. And I agree with you that it's a corporation. It's a fault of the corporation and that situation as well. But like, here's the thing that's wild. Phase 4 or M5 of Marvel, right? Lackluster. Like it has issues. Fans, divided on a lot of that stuff.
Right.
They still made $6 billion in the box office of the last couple of years. Eight
Because
movies,
of
six
the equity
billion.
from the first 3 phases.
Dude, if you're Disney, you can survive a rough couple critical years and some not great successes with the fans with Marvel if you're making $6 billion in the fucking movie theaters. Kathy has done nothing with her time. You know how much money she's accumulated in the box office? Zero, dude. So it's like, and when I start to think of like, well, Feige was potentially going to do something with Star Wars, and we would have at least had something. There would have been something different in this other movie, and you find out Kathy sabotaged that movie the whole time under that. You know what I mean? And like try to make it seem like it wasn't even a thing. Like, dude, this lady is seriously bad at her job.
She is.
And she has this massive ego that has prevented her from collaboration and from allowing Feige to come in and like do a movie. And now they are in the position they are in, at least partially because of her.
Of course.
Of course, the corporate mandates are there, but Marvel had the corporate mandates. And by the way, Marvel's also leveraged the fact that the corporate mandates have fucked up their shit. So now Feige gets to go to Iger and say, well, if you want quality, we got to slow down. And he has earned that right because he played ball for 2 years and put out all this mid-ass stuff that they wanted for Disney Plus.
Yes.
So now he can leverage it back and it's going to be fine. Kathy didn't do none of that, dude.
Yeah, well, but the truth is, bro, I'm glad you said this because now we're going into like some more corporate talk. And I think a lot of the audience, man, and this is not your fault, audience, I've been involved in corporations. I'm a business owner now, and there's a lot of things people have to understand. The reason why I'm not in corporate America anymore is because of shit like this. What you're talking about. The snakery, the pressure, the backstabbing, you mentioned the egos. I think Kathy Kennedy's ego is so big that logically she probably realizes, yeah, you know what, maybe I should have stepped down 3 years ago, but she's going to stick it to those damn manosphere guys. She's going to stick it. I'm going to prove I can save this. And you know what? It's not even a woman thing. Guys do that shit all the time. It's not even a gender thing. It's how people are, bro. People are very egotistical. But it's funny you mentioned that because that's literally, when you mentioned Feige leveraging it, like that's literally the right move. A good example of this, in fact, a great example. Go back a couple years ago and look at, I think it was D23 a couple years ago when you had Feige and Kennedy giving their presentations. Feige's presentation was organized, structured. Yeah. It was, everything had a plan. Kathy was out there like, yeah, we're going to do, like, I saw that and I had friends of mine that you don't know hit me up privately and were like, dude, she came off like she was totally unprepared. With the whole, like, when they announced all that shit, and I'm like, one person.
Yeah, she's just not, dude, she's just not good at that.
She's just not good at it. She's not a leader.
Which,
Feige is a leader, and it has nothing to do
right.
with gender. There are good women leaders, too. It has nothing to do with that.
And there are horrible male producers and presidents. I mean,
Yeah.
Kevin Tsuchihara, if you look at, like, DC, right? Kevin Tsuchihara is this, like, absolute douchebag that, like, destroyed DC and, like, screwed over Snyder and did, like, all this horrible stuff. Like, DC has wrought a lot of the issues of James, or not James Gunn.
Snyder?
Jeff Johns. No,
Oh,
Jeff
Jeff Johns.
Johns.
Jeff Johns.
Kevin Tsuchihara. Like those guys have been seriously toxic and created some serious problems. I mean, look at David Zaslav. Like Zaslav came in, and he's like literally the Department of Justice is about to fucking investigate some of these moves that this guy made because he clearly came in, gutted this thing to just try to hollow out cost so they can turn around and flip it and sell it. Like this dude is literally just going. That's not cool. Like you know what I mean? Like it might end up being criminal. We'll see. But like it's definitely not a sex thing, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, like Kathy is just the one out of all the people we just mentioned that's like still doing her thing and no repercussions. Nothing.
Right.
There's been nothing.
Right.
Dude. And so it's like it's mind
And
blowing.
because of that, I blame Iger too.
Well, Iger was gone for a while. So it was on Chapek, but you're absolutely right.
right.
Like the fact that he didn't come in and then Victoria Alonso gets fired, which honestly, like I have no tears for Victoria Alonso. She probably got a severance, shut up, buddy. We'll probably never hear from her again. But the point is, when the company that made $6 billion in the box office over the past couple of years, including during the pandemic, gets their person that was with the company for 17 years gets fired unceremoniously because you're having a rough couple of years. How the fuck does Kathleen Kennedy have zero repercussions? I mean, they got rid of Michelle Rejwan a while back, which was like, you know, whatever. But it's just like crazy to me, you know? So like when it comes to like the Ray stuff, when it comes to this movie, I try to walk the line of being like, I don't want to just completely hate it from the jump street.
Right.
I'm going to give it a chance. And I want to like,
you just don't trust leadership like me.
I just can't act. I just can't act like we're not living under the same exact regime, making the same exact mistakes. It's like, dude,
brother, you know what? I've said
bad icebergs are out there.
Like, I have said this about. Here's the recurring theme on my channel. I have criticized things that I don't like, but there is one recurring theme I have talked about with Dragon Ball, with Star Wars, with Marvel, with Hasbro and Power Rangers. When a corporation controls a franchise, it's no longer about the creativity. It's only about money. I have said this for years. The only saving grace to all this is that at least Japan listens to Toriyama sometimes. And even he's old as shit. But, dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is not just a Disney Star Wars problem. DC and Warner Brothers Discovery, they change their mind every couple of years. You know, you mentioned the executives. You've got Hasbro with Power Rangers. Jason David Frank's movie, he had a script ready. He was going to do it all himself. They tell him, fuck off. Then now he's dead, and they can't ever do the movie. Like, there are so many... I don't know how much you know about it, but, like, this is a recurring thing where corporations controlling something... It's always going to be about the bottom line and never about what the fans really care about. And we need executives that actually... Feige at least gives a shit. At least he cares.
Yeah. I mean, I think he pretty deeply cares. You know what I mean?
For better or for worse.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, we'll see because they're in a transitional period. And I think a lot of fans are going to judge, you know, what the next couple of years look like. And I think rightfully so. I mean, they have the zeitgeist. They have to keep delivering and they have to keep upping the ante. So we'll see like kind of how that all goes, right? But again, you're talking about $6 billion in the box office, bro. Like this is they've lit that shit up. And I know people feel weird about whatever, but like, dude, Spider-Man No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, these fucking massive movies, dude. Like they crushed, right? So Marvel, even in the midst of like not doing that great, has still outclassed every other major franchise, every other studio with output and quality. So it's like, it's crazy because we talk about Marvel and will they turn the corner and they're still dominating most of these other franchises. And the issue with Marvel almost seems to be completely from downward pressure from Disney. If it wasn't for Disney Plus, I just don't know if we'd be in that same issue, right? I
agree with you.
So, but like, yeah, you're right. Like the corporate controlled art is scary and dangerous. You would love to hopefully get to a point where maybe the corporations begun to understood that there's value in bringing on people that are not suits that truly understand the material. You
like
would think
Filoni.
people would get that. Well, yeah, you would think people would get that with Filoni and Favreau, but even like the new Mario movie, right? Like they have the Mario guy being involved.
Shigeru Miyamoto.
And Nintendo, very protective of a lot of stuff that went on in that movie. You have Neil Druckmann actually creating the Last of Us show. So you have like the actual video game people coming in and being like, yo, look, this is how it is. So I think that Hollywood just imitates and does what works. Luckily, we live in a day and age where audiences are less easily fooled. And so, look, they're just not able to get away with a lot of the other stuff that they did. And hopefully, what that turns into is them embracing more of the creatives and stuff. And I think that there's a whole bunch of stuff on the horizon that could be incredible. God of War show on Amazon, Warhammer stuff on Amazon, Invincible season 2, Rebel Moon from Zack Snyder, and more video game stuff. We might be living in an era, dude, where we're gonna start to see a shift. And
Well, no,
unfortunately,
I think we are
that
living in that era, bro. I think
yeah,
we are.
I think
I
that
think
the only downside,
video games have become so cinematic. Not Last
true.
of Us, God of War. Video games have almost replaced movies in many ways when you think about it.
Well, they're far bigger financially wise. They're
Stories in
far bigger.
video games are like 10, 20 episode long seasons wrapped up into a
Mhm.
40-hour game or even longer, like, and they're more satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. I think the only thing that sucks about this transitional period is that it's going to come at the cost of like maybe Star Wars. Like Star Wars might, it just depends on how the next couple of years go. But Star Wars could end up being like a very hollowed out brand and be looked at as because a lot of people say
You would
like
have
nowadays
never
like
thought
Star Wars
so.
died, et cetera, et cetera. But I actually do see a scenario in which Star Wars like legitimately sees a mass exodus of fans. It's something that will shock. I think a lot of people might even be shocked at how the viewership is going with Mando and how
Right.
that's happening.
What
But
about the what if you how would you feel if Star Wars shifted and focused more on video games like Jedi Survivor, games like that? What about that? I mean, but then again, they're not going to do that because Disney, again, corporation, they got to make
Mhm.
money with every way, merch, TV,
Yeah,
movies, games. But I would love it if Star Wars just went over to games. When Lucas had it, we had what, a 17-year drought or something like that, where we had games and books and that's all we had.
games and books, yeah,
People who were
comics, yeah,
young didn't even live through that, bro. I lived through it.
yeah, yeah. I think that there's opportunity there. Of course, the issue I think is, well, is this still just
Is
going to be that regime
corporations.
under Kathy, and doing their thing? And uh, yeah, it's tough, man. I don't know how that all shakes out. I think that the entire culture of Lucasfilm is like super broken. I think the brand itself is super broken. I think there are a lot of people like you and I that like despite all that are still going to try to give a fair shake to stuff and get excited about the stuff we think is exciting. But it's they're losing the battle. You know what I mean? Like they're losing the battle with the internet. And I don't even know if they realize it. And it's just it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years, you know? Will Kathy maybe stepping down provide a sort of new spark for a lot of people, or will that just turn off maybe the only fans that they already still are holding on to really hard? It's like it's really, really hard to say. But bro, I'm telling you right now, I'm not that confident in the future of Star Wars. Like
No, one thing I do know though, bro, is that there's a whole casual audience that doesn't give a shit about anything that we talk about on the internet, that doesn't know anything about the behind the scenes, that just goes to watch the movies. And I've said that a lot, man. I think because we get caught up in the bubble
yeah,
here, covering this stuff and being lifelong nerds, there's people out there who just went to go see Last Jedi and just accepted it for what it was and didn't understand its problems. That's the thing.
sure.
As long as there's casuals that are willing to pay for it,
But here's the thing about that, right? So like I hear you, and I think that's actually a good point. But here's the thing: Star Wars is already a niche taste making or a taste maker's brand. And what I mean by that is like if you look at just raw numbers, all these really ridiculous, stupid shows like CIS, whatever, those shows are actually
you
way
CSI.
bigger. Yeah,
Oh
those
yeah,
shows
yeah.
are those shows are like 10 to 20 to 50 times bigger than even the biggest Marvel or Disney shows.
Especially
Okay?
sports. Sports are also much bigger.
Yeah. So like what you have is you have a lot of like sort of people on the coasts that it's almost like a taste making thing. It's like Star Wars is the conversation piece and Marvel is the conversation piece and it's big compared to a lot of the other stuff that tries to compete with it. But the
Right.
reality of the
Right.
situation is
Yeah.
there's all this other content that's way bigger,
Not
way more
a good
mass
example
appeal.
of that, bro, is Star Wars sold for 4 billion. WWE just sold for 9 billion.
That's exactly, yeah.
But I had tons of Star Wars fans telling me nobody cares about wrestling anymore. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
9 billion, bro. People care.
100%.
People care.
100%, dude. That's the
Yeah.
point. Is like but what I
Different
mean
business
is
model too.
different business model, but what I mean is like, so, you're saying like there's all these casuals that'll just go support. What I'm saying to you is like I don't know if that's true. Like I just don't know if
I
that's
think
true.
so because I talked to it, dude. One of the best videos ever was Andy Signor went to Tampa Bay Comic Con and he interviewed people who are cosplayers. What do you think about Zack Snyder not coming back? Who's that? Nobody fucking know, dude. There's people who don't care. They don't ever read the credits. They don't care who the director is. I
Yeah,
think
no,
that's what I'm
dude,
saying. They're out there,
I
bro.
agree with you. I agree with you, but all I'm suggesting is that like there are a lot of people that don't even go to the movies. So you're already
I agree with
talking
that.
about like, but that's what I mean. Is like, so we can't say like, oh, dude, who all goes to the movies? All of these like normie ass motherfuckers, because that's not true. There's a lot of those people that do go to the movies, but a lot of the movie going audience is actually much more informed than I think you would think. But they also don't watch like CSI whatever,
Right.
right?
No,
So
it's
it's
a
like
different
we're talking about
audience.
right. We're talking about like different things. So I don't know how many casuals are casual enough that they don't know about like the stuff going into the movie or whatever. They don't even maybe watch the trailers. I don't know how big that group actually is compared to the people that are going to the movies. It's like this. The reason I think that a lot of comic book movies started to really take off is because that audience of people that actually go to the movies has a crazy big overlap with people that actually like to go out and research stuff and be informed. It used to be on like messaging
Well,
boards
I
or
also think
whatever,
they had a
right?
lot of good movies too. They had good, genuinely good films. Iron Man,
They had entertaining well,
Avengers.
no, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like even kind of before the MCU, right?
I
Because
mean,
like the
Spider Man,
Nolan
X
movies are
Men,
huge.
Blade.
Spider-Man, Blade, yeah.
Yeah,
So the
right.
reason I think those movies take off is because there's this huge overlap with nerdy people
I agree
who
with
are
that.
like
Yeah.
the type of personality that are gonna like dive deep, read comics, read books, like all this sort of stuff. Massive overlap with that group and the people that go to the movies. So that's how nerds were able to take over the zeitgeist of movies because even though we're not a huge percentage of the general population, we're a huge percentage of the population that goes to the movies, talks
Yeah.
about stuff
Right.
online, and creates like the taste making, right? So I just think that that's why Star Wars is actually more susceptible to that group disengaging
I
than
see.
like,
Yeah, that's a good point. No,
you see what I mean?
it's more susceptible to the group disengaging versus the Disney live action remakes. I refuse to
Exactly.
go watch the
Yeah.
Disney live action remakes.
Same.
I
Never seen one.
refused. I don't want to. Well, I saw Maleficent, and that's when I checked out.
Okay.
But they always make a billion every time, and
Exactly.
there's a
Exactly.
totally different audience that's
It's
super
the Judge
casual.
Judy watching people, bro.
Right,
That's the
right, right.
people that
Yeah,
go to see that.
and the
Yeah.
little girls that don't even go on the internet to look that stuff up. But
Yeah.
with Star Wars, I agree there are definitely more Star Wars nerds. But would you agree with this then? Depending on how this Ray movie does, how the trailers are received, not even the behind the scenes, just the trailers and the box office. At that point, I think we're gonna have a better idea of just how much
Yeah.
damage the sequel trilogy did, and what Mandalorian did, and what the real place of Star Wars is. Because if that movie
I
does a
agree.
billion, bro, and it actually turns out to be good, good for everybody. But if it does a billion and it sucks still, what does that mean? Or what if it doesn't do a
Yeah.
billion but it's
Yeah.
great? There's a lot of
No,
scenarios
yeah.
here.
I see. Yeah, I see your point. I think that that's the other thing that's terrifying about this movie is that they will not have any of that information until they have already spent way too much money. You know what I mean? Like they won't have the information on how it's tracking, how's the buzz, how are the trailers performing. They won't know any of that until they've already sunk in 200 million in
That's
3
part of
years.
movie making, bro. It's
That's movie
Disney.
making,
Yeah.
but I agree with you. But I'm just saying, like, how do you sit there in that scenario and make the call to make a Ray movie? Like, how is that like the strat?
Not
know what
just
I
that, but
mean?
you're gonna hire a director who's pretty much a neo-feminist. I mean, when I
And
first,
it's a no name. She has no brand
if it
recognition
was
whatsoever.
James Mangold doing the Ray movie, I'd feel
Oh
better
my
about
god,
it. If it was Filoni,
100%.
dude, if it was Filoni doing the Ray movie, I'd be like, okay,
Yeah,
he's gonna do what he can. He'll do what I
exactly.
will do what I must, like what freaking
Yeah,
Obi-Wan said.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's this neo. So you got Kathy Kennedy, who has the reputation of being feminist, neo-feminist.
Hmm.
You've got this director, and then you've got Ray, who is again unfortunate for Daisy Ridley, maybe not for her wallet, but unfortunate for her. But that
Yeah,
character to a lot of people represents this super alt left anti men agenda. Whether you believe that or not, people believe that. And
yep.
unfortunately for her, she's gonna have to come back and reprise the role. They had to have thrown a hell of a check at her, bro, because she said she
Oh yeah.
wasn't gonna come back, and she's
Oh
she's
yeah, they
coming
gave her
back.
legacy money. I don't think she'll make as much as John though, because John is if John comes
Boyega, you
back, I
mean?
think yeah.
Oh yeah,
If
well
Boyega comes
he's
back, they're gonna
pissed.
dump a literal truck of money on him. And the thing is, he deserves it because he positioned himself. It's like really smart the way he handled his business. Despite how you feel about whatever issues he's talking about, at the end of the day, he positioned it so that if he doesn't come back, it's gonna look really bad for Disney.
Yep,
So they
he
have
played the
to give him the
card. He
money.
played the
Right.
card
He
correctly.
played it, dude. He played it
He played it
brilliantly.
better than Cyborg.
He played it better than any motherfucker I've seen in a long time. And it's like he got him basically. So like they're gonna have to pay him to show up just to make them look like they've learned. You know what I mean? And they're doing so much better now. So like, kudos to him. He'll get the check. But at the end of the day, bro, like it's just crazy. Like we're sitting here, it's days after the announcement has just been made. The internet is going
There's so
insane.
much to talk about,
It's just
and yet
like,
nothing.
but yeah, but here's the thing, like there's so much to talk about, but it's the wrong shit to talk about, which is ultimately why this movie is a huge mistake. Because if they just would have had, like, imagine this, imagine just putting up the title, episode 10, and you say nothing about who's coming back. That is literally better
That's better
discourse than what we're
That's
talking
better.
about right now.
People
You know
are
what I
gonna
mean?
shit on it. People are gonna be happy, but you're
Yeah.
creating that mystery.
Exactly. And then it's like, oh, wow, a whole trilogy? There must be something really cooking. This isn't even a trilogy. It's not even an episodic movie. It's the Miss Marvel director. It's like they went into the mindset of, well, what would be the worst possible things we could put together to try to make the next Star Wars movie
Dude, the
as
only thing worse
shaky
would have been if they announced Ryan Johnson to direct it, bro. Then
to
people would have
direct it. Yeah.
lost it. Even though
Yeah.
his two Knives Out movies weren't even that bad, like he's
I
not
like
a-
his Knives Out
I
movies,
like
yeah.
him. He should be doing, dude. If I said this before, and this is
Yeah.
sacrilege to a lot of Star Wars fans. If Ryan Johnson writes a Star Wars story where it's like it's like 10 Jedi and one of them is
Yeah.
secretly on the dark side, that could be a fucking phenomenal. It's Knives Out in Star Wars.
Yeah.
If you take that idea, lightsabers out, right, and you
Yeah,
put
yeah.
that would actually work, but just not with Episode 8. You know.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree with you. It's just like, again, it just kind of comes down to the fact that like I would love to be excited about the next Star Wars movie,
You're
and
you're
I'm
cautious.
open to.
You're cautious, right?
Well, it's like it's beyond cautious at this point. I am literally expecting it to be a absolute dumpster fire of a situation, not necessarily a movie. The movie might be fire, but the Discord, they have literally just basically said, dude, they literally just looked us in the eye and said, buckle up for multiple years of the same discourse that's been going on in this fandom for the past 5.
Or
Like-
multiple
like
years of
more.
people making a lot of money on YouTube because let's keep it real. The Last
No, yeah.
Jedi, The Last Jedi made some people rich on this fucking platform,
Bro,
my friend.
we're back to 2016. It's
2017.
anti-Brie Larson videos and anti-KK videos all day.
2017.
That's where we're at.
2017.
Is it 2017?
Yeah, because
Was that when Miss
2016
Marvel
was
came?
Rogue One. 2017 was Last Jedi.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
back
so
to that again.
We're back to anti-Brie and anti-KK. And I got to be honest with you, fuck them both, bro. Like, I'm not even trying to be a hater. Like, I'm not trying to be a hater.
That
but, like,
Marvel
it's not, I
trailer
didn't,
did not hit for me either, bro.
Oh, dude, it's like, so it's whatever. But like Brie is literally just the most walking cringe person. And I'm sorry, it's not my fault that Brie was so cringe that she became like literally people were building extensions on their house from the AdSense they got from making Brie Larson videos. I didn't do that.
No,
I wasn't a
neither
part of
of us
that.
did.
But I'm not gonna sit here and act like she's not walking cringe. She is a cringy, ridiculous person. And same with Kathy. That shit is earned. So it's
Yeah.
like, what do you want from me? Like, here we go again. You think this is my fault? You think I want this to happen? No, they should not.
No, dude, I got you. And you know what? Before we wrap up, this will be the last thing. I said this to of all people, Darth Melvin and a lot of other people who don't like the sequel trilogy. If they came out and they said, honestly, at Celebration, KK or whomever said, look, we fucked up. They'll never say this because there's egos and there's shareholders. But if they actually were real and said, okay, we fucked up, we're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to write stories for everyone, not just one side. We're going to write different kinds of stories, and we're going to develop a new trilogy or a new set of films, and we're going to come up with, we're going to have everything ready before we put things into actual pre-production. I think that would go a long way because at least people who aren't just hate mongering would look at that and say, okay, at least they're talking to us with honesty. They are never going to acknowledge that they fucked up. It's always the fans' fault. And another recurring theme on this channel is don't ever fucking blame the fans, dude. That's the worst
Don't
thing
ever
you can do.
I agree.
That's the
I
worst
agree with
move.
you there. Yeah, I agree with you, man. And I think that, as somebody that's covered Star Wars very closely over the past couple of years, it's just been like a slow moving car crash. And I'm frankly shocked. On the one hand, I'm shocked that they were able to actually have a great celebration with the presentations and get people excited. But I'm also shocked that like we're still just doing all the same stuff. And it's just very hard for me to legitimately get excited about this when I know what's happened in the past, when I know the people that are involved. And I just expect it to be a glorious disaster. You know what I mean? Like, frankly, I do. And I'm just in it for the ride at this point. You know, me and
we
Theory
were
say a lot to
supposed
each
to
other now.
speculate about Rey being pregnant, and 80% of this video is about how this movie's either not going to happen or that's okay, though.
Bro.
That's
No,
all
I know.
right.
I'm sorry. I
It's
tried.
like
Hey, I tried. You know,
no,
I
look,
tried. But
it's like one of your streams, bro.
yeah, at the end of the day, man, it is tough, and again, I'm open to that. I'm open to the kids. I'm open to the forced pregnancy. I'm open to Ben coming back. Get weird with it. I don't care. I just want the movie to be great, and I would appreciate if the discourse was not what it was, but there's going to be zero effort on Lucasfilm's part to create better discourse.
I just want a good story, no matter what.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Anyways, y'all, check out Den of Nerds. Thank you, bro, for spending time with me today. It was a pleasure.
Of course.
Yes,
Of course. It was good. It was good to rant and vent a little bit. Yeah, absolutely.
No, always a good time. But we'll get together soon, I'm sure. But take care, man, and take care, you guys. We'll see you next time.